pulled the mattress on top of us, my wife Ruth and I, and within a matter of seconds it was gone, and we were laid.
It sounded to me like multiple pans of bacon frying loudly in a pan.
Something, I said, I hear something like that. We could hear the glass breaking in the windows breaking, and everything was just flying.
Join us as we explore tornadoes in the Appalachians. A look back at the April 2nd, 2024 historical tornado outbreak across the Charleston County warning area. A look back at the evolution of tornadoes on radar across our region, plus a look at climatology of these tornadoes in southern West Virginia. Our program starts right now. And what we're looking at now, this is the animation of the cloud cover and the lightning overlaid as we had the round of storms move through on April 2nd. You can see the linear fashion of the lightning, quite intense lightning. And then as we put this into motion, it moves south and east. And look, you get that bowing feature with the lightning. The bowing feature on radar usually means very strong winds. And there's the second round of storms later in the afternoon. We had individual pockets of lightning associated with individual severe storms that produced tornadoes across southern parts of West Virginia. Now this is another radar animation. This is here across the Tennessee Valley in Kentucky. Lots of lightning with these storms, and as we put this into motion as well, you can see that the second round produced copious amounts of lightning with the individual storms. The rate of lightning, the higher the rate, the more intense the thunderstorms are and the better chance that they can produce severe weather, including high winds and tornadoes. So this is the path of the Heiko tornado. Now, even though it's rated as an EF2, it did not start out as an EF2. It did start out as an EF1. It did intensify to an EF2 as it got closer to Route 60, which is Midland Trail. The winds picked up. That's why it was qualified as an EF2 tornado. Now, just as it crossed Route 60, that's when it weakened a bit, and then it eventually went back up into its funnel. So when the Weather Service does their assessment, if any one part of that path was a higher ranking, that's the official ranking for the tornado. So it was an EF2 that touched down for a brief period of time in the town of Heiko along Midland Trail. Now this is the damage that we saw when we went out there, that we've showed on the news multiple times. And we have trees that are coming inwards a lot. So that's a very good sign that there was rotation in the storm. This is the forest behind Midland Trail. All these trees completely blown to bits as the tornado moved through. And yes, we were out there a couple days later because this frontal system marked a big change in the air mass, and there was snow coming down on top of these toppled trees in the Heiko area. Now this is the number of tornadoes according to the Storm Prediction Center from April 1st through about the end of the month. And you can see the greatest concentrations there in the Eastern Plains, the Midwest, and then of course that stripe of real estate through the Ohio Valley and the southern part of the Appalachians, and also several storms along the spine of the Appalachians. So you can see where the heart of Tornado Alley is, but this year has expanded east into parts of southern West Virginia.
I was home during the episode. We were out of electricity because of the earlier storm, and all of a sudden here come at 4:30 the tornado, I guess. At the time I didn't know what it was, and but it sounded to me like multiple pans of bacon frying loudly in a pan there.
The April 2nd, 2024 EF2 Heiko tornado will forever live in the memories of those in the La Vista community along Midland Trail hit hard by that storm. It was part of the outbreak that produced 10 tornadoes in West Virginia and 17 in the Charleston County warning area. Now, this busts through several records, including the previous calendar day record for the state of West Virginia, which was 7 tornadoes on both April 4th, 1974 and June 2nd, 1998. Not to be outdone, the previous calendar year record
For the entire year for the Charleston County warning area was 11 tornadoes in 1980, and we are not even halfway through 2024.
It touched down just several hundred yards from the house, and just thank the Lord that we didn't get stuck in the middle of that, and I'm really hurt for the people that had all the loss. We were very fortunate.
Fortunately, there were no loss of lives in the Heiko tornado and only a few injuries. Of course, our Storm Team 4 will continue to monitor trends going forward through the rest of the year and bring you the latest severe weather information during our newscasts every day. Chief Meteorologist Chad Merrill for Newswatch.
So this was qualified as an EF2 tornado. Now, observers can detect a tornado or can be detected by radar. Ultimately, the Weather Service has to make the determination whether the storm produced straight line winds or a tornado. How do they go about doing it? Well, last year we went to Hinton, where the Weather Service in Blacksburg had issued a tornado warning. They followed up with that storm to see if it was straight line winds or tornadoes, and we hear from one of the meteorologists what they look for when they observe a tornado versus straight line winds.
We didn't see any indication that the winds were bringing those trees and converging them to a point like what we would want to see in a tornado. So they were all blown down pretty much in an eastward direction.
All right, folks, so let's take a look at some of the damage that we saw in the Heiko area and how it compares to what Douglas just mentioned. So we have video from the tornado once again, and this is from a viewer. And notice you can definitely see the spin there. That is definitely a sign of a tornado. You can see the wall cloud, the funnel cloud, the whole 9 yards. That was from Fayetteville. Now, this next footage is from east of the storm. And you can definitely see the low-hanging wall cloud there in the distance, and this was from Lookout. So we definitely had signs of rotation, and we saw the damage, and we saw that the trees were all came down in different ways. So indeed, we definitely had EF2, and it didn't take long for the Weather Service in Charleston to make that determination. Now, we will have much more information on tornado climatology across the region after this break. Welcome back, folks. Now we are going to take a look at what transpired in April in tornado climatology across the region. Now, the tornado outbreak occurred in the first week in April, and we saw a big temperature change, and that big temperature change fueled the severe weather. Now, when we look at the preliminary unfiltered local storm report count since 2003, and we rank this, now what we're looking at is this past April 1st through the 29th, and how it ranks since 2003. So basically, these deeper yellow and orange colors means we've had more storm reports than normal that rank up there compared to previous years, ranking back to 2003. So this backwards L shape is where you've had the more storms than average. And that lines up with the tornadoes that we showed you from part one. So it's been an active severe weather season across the plains, Midwest, all the way through the Tennessee Valley into our region. So now let's take a look at the local storm report departure from average count. Obviously, when you're looking at anything that's a departure from average, if you have the higher numbers like these red colors, that means you've had more storms than average. So Nebraska, Iowa, the state of Ohio has been hit hard. And this lines up with the graphic that we just saw. Here in West Virginia, we rank above average at 9. So we've had a lot of severe weather in this particular zone, and that lines up with everything we've seen so far during the month of April. So now when we look at the high temperatures across the region, the 2 rounds of storms happened April 2nd. The high was 71 degrees. And look at that, by the end of the week, we were 39 degrees. That big temperature contrast did help fuel the severe weather outbreak. And for the rest of the month, we really didn't have that big of a temperature change over a short period of time. So we didn't deal with nearly as much severe weather as we did the first week of April that produced the EF2 in Heiko. So when we look at the tornado climatology in our area, we typically do see a spike in April with tornadoes. So that's on track with climatology. We usually see a decrease in May. Now this is from the National Weather Service in Charleston jurisdiction, which takes into account northeastern Kentucky, eastern Ohio, and most of West Virginia west of the Greenbrier Valley. June is the month when we typically see the most number of tornadoes, and then it rapidly falls off in July and definitely August, September, and October. So when we look at the monthly breakdown of tornado counts across West Virginia, here's the 1950s, here's the 1960s. Notice we start to see that spike with more tornadoes, and April stands out like a sore thumb. 1970s, April stands out like a sore thumb. We had the outbreak in April 1974, for instance. 1980s, June and July were the hot months for tornadoes in the entire state of West Virginia. And then once we got into the 90s, June was the big jump there in number of tornadoes. The rest of the year, hardly any. Very little in the 2000s, but notice how we've jumped 2010 to 2022. And of course, the months that stand out in all these different decades, April and the month of June. So when we look at past analog year, this is 2016. We had a super El Nino in the winter, and then we went into a La Nina period where the atmosphere or the ocean temperatures along the equatorial Pacific cool below average. That's the best analog so far for the spring season. And what you're looking at is the number of storm reports compared to average. Once again, the higher up you are on the scale, the more severe weather rounds that you've had. And that matches the arc that we saw with the storm reports from our region in West Virginia through Kentucky, through Missouri, all the way down to the eastern plains. So you can see that 2016 is a great analog year to what we are seeing right now. But here's what I really want to point out. This goes from May 1st through the end of July as well. So this means that we can expect in the Tennessee Valley and Midwest more severe weather than normal likely going forward through the summer season. So take a look here at the rank for 2016 again. I just want to point out that that arc still exists from the West Virginia area all the way back through the Tennessee Valley into the eastern plains. So we're just looking at this from a different perspective from May 1st through July 31st. So the severe weather is very prominent when you transition from an El Nino to a La Nina. Now when we look at tornadoes in 2010, that's the second best matched analog year for us is 2010. You still see a bit of a stripe of real estate here across the Midwest, but there's also an indication in the upper Midwest that there's historically, during that particular year, we transitioned from an El Nino to a La Nina, more tornadoes than average. So what this goes to show is that we'll likely have a period of active weather continue across the nation's midsection, but once we get deeper into the summer, we'll have more storms that develop here across the upper Mississippi Valley that could track where these higher colors are into our region over the summer. So that's a second track of storms that we could possibly expect. Now let's check this out. These are some images from past storm events that have produced straight line wind damage across the region. Usually when we see this bowing feature like we did, this was a late July 2023 outbreak of storms. That bowing feature usually indicates high winds, and that's the bowing feature we had on the radar, and here's the storm reports that verified along that, and that is across our region. Now we take a look at another storm event. Check it out. Here's the storms developing across the Ohio River, and you can put this into motion and see the storms did intensify as they moved into our region. The deeper, darker reds indicates where you have the stronger storms, and as they continued to move east, they did intensify, and then this particular line started to develop across the region and settle to the south, and it's usually the southern cell along that narrow line that has the best access to available moisture and instability that will likely produce a tornado or straight line winds. When you get that west to east movement of storms, it's always the southern cell that's going to have the strongest winds with it. And the farther north you go, you're more of a broad rain shield with less severe weather. So here's another one. Now this is June 2nd, 1998, another busy day for severe weather across the region. This is a tornado warning that was issued in one of our counties, and this is the supercell. A supercell is a storm that has the potential for tornado, gusty winds, and hail. So what we see here is the tornado warning was issued on the part of the cell. This is base reflectivity though. It's picking up on what's called a hook echo feature, like a little hook. That indicates where you have a lot of rotation and the potential for a tornado. When you get to these deeper colors to the north, that's where you usually have heavy rain and hail. So this is a typical supercell that produced a tornado in the southern flank, and then hail, high winds, and heavy rain to the north. So this particular animation, as we put this into motion, shows the evolution of thunderstorms across our region from another particular event. And what we're seeing here is the storms are moving south and east. And notice what we have is a tornado watch issued. Here's the big storm, the big dark red and yellow. And as that moves east, it maintains itself because there's very few storms to the south to block the inflow. That's the inflow of warm, moist air into the system. So that storm maintained itself as it moved across the region. And the tornado watch extended into parts of Virginia. Now here's another feature, that this is the storm that just hit the Hyco area, April 2nd, 2024. This is the outline of the warning. This is exactly where we saw everything verified. The tornado verified in the hook echo feature, and we had hail verified to the north. Typical supercell that moved through the Hyco area, producing the EF2 tornado. Now, here is a radar animation. Now, when you see a lot of this green and yellow color over a large area, that's an expansive area of light to moderate to briefly heavy rain. So, in this particular image that is animated as well, what you can see is that as we go through time here, the southern part of that cell takes over, and there's the storm that just moved through the Hyco area. So what I'm trying to point out here is you have a broad shield of rain to the north, but on the southern part of that cell, if there's nothing to the south blocking the inflow of warm air, that storm is going to maintain itself, and that's where you have the best rotation that's going to happen in that storm. One thing to point out, there's the storm, and notice the band of rain extended all the way north into Maryland. It's a good indication of the strength of the upper level winds as well. So I'm going to talk about this for a second here. This is the jet stream from April 4th, 1974, and what you're seeing here is a jet streak. See this dark blue feature right here? So we talk about the jet stream a lot in meteorology, and that's the upper level wind pattern. It's where you have the jets flying at very high speeds. Sometimes you hear about, a jet cruising across the Atlantic at a record speed because it's following the jet stream, and the jet stream's unusually fast or faster than normal. Well, the jet streak within the jet stream is that zone of very strong winds. April 4th, 1974, we had a jet streak coming right up the Mississippi Valley. We also had a warm front across our region. So the tornadoes happen right in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. You would not expect a tornado at that time, but we had enhanced upper level winds coming into West Virginia that made up for the lack of instability we would have during the day because the sun wasn't out. So in the springtime, we get a lot of these contrasted air masses that fuel these big jet streaks where you have 130 to 140 knot winds within a zone of about 100 knot winds, and that increases the divergence aloft and helps to fuel a thunderstorm. Here's April 2nd, 2024. So what we're looking at right here is the jet stream earlier in the season. Now, do you see any similarities from the one I just showed you back in 1974 to April 2nd, 2024? Huge similarities. So in meteorology, we look for analog storms, and this was an analog storm, and indeed we had the EF2 and Hyco. So here's the jet streak, folks. You could probably clearly see that evident on the radar. And one other thing to mention here is to see all these wind barbs. Some of the wind barbs are going from Ohio north into Pennsylvania, while some of the other wind barbs are going east into Virginia. not only did we have the upper level divergence, but we had the upper level diffluence. Anytime winds aloft separate, the air has to recover. You have to fill that void, so air from the surface comes in and replaces that. So what I'm showing you is we had an upper level pattern that was very favorable for tornadoes in our region. The trough axis was to the west, and we had plenty of wind shear and diffluence to help allow that air to rise quite a bit. And this one also, now you normally would not expect a tornado in this area in October, but there was a tornado in the Raleigh County area October 2014. Now you're saying, well, this image kind of looks similar, but kind of like lopsided compared to the others. So in the other two, what we saw was the jet stream coming in from the Mississippi Valley. In this one, you can see the jet stream is oriented from northwest to southeast, and the jet streak, the highest velocity winds, are coming straight out of Canada, pointing right into West Virginia. So in the previous two, the jet streak was pointing into West Virginia, but from the south. This one's pointing in from the north and west. So we had a strong cold front coming through, but the sun angle's lower in the sky, so you need something to help boost the energy in the atmosphere, and that was this jet streak that came curling out of Canada, and that helped generate the instability, which generated the tornado that hit our particular region. So what I'm trying to show you here, folks, is that yes, we get tornadoes. The mountains do not block tornadoes. What helps to enhance the instability, because we don't get the intense heating and the big temperature clashes that they do in the plains, is all driven by upper level dynamics. And if it comes together at just the right time, we will see these violent tornadoes that can produce, or violent storms that can produce tornadoes. Now, one thing that some of you may have a fear of, people have different fears, but some people have a little bit of anxiety over storms. So we actually spoke with one of our viewers about storm anxiety, and he gave us a detailed example of what actually led him to start being anxious about these storms. And this is something that you may learn some information from.
So, can you tell me what sparked your storm anxiety? When do you think it developed?
Probably the derecho of what was it, 2012?
Yeah.
What happened in June. Because before that, I've been through every bad storm imaginable. I've been through Hugo, Andrew here. We've had tornado warnings before where I lived at the time, and that's just the first time that something that big came out of pretty much nowhere. I mean, I had my father at the hospital in Green River Valley that night, and when we got back home, just the darkest, lowest clouds I've ever seen in my life, and I just haven't been the same since. It's just like they say, every storm's different, and I guess that's why it's still getting out of hand. Just feel like every one I go through, maybe my last one, makes it hard.
So, before a potential severe thunderstorm, what goes through your mind?
Pretty much every bad thing imaginable. Like I used to live on the mountain, and you feel pretty untouchable up there, even though they haven't been known to touch down in places like that. But now I live in a trailer, and it's just one of the worst places you could possibly be. I mean, it's proven that the weather's getting worse, and it's just hitting in places that I believe they even said that, Tornado Alley's even moving a little bit more east because it's getting drier in most places over there where it is normally right now, in Oklahoma and places like that. And, I mean, it just seems like anything's possible anymore, especially here.
Now, is it just with severe thunderstorms, usually in the warm season, or does it also happen ahead of major winter storms that bring us a lot of snow?
No, winter storms never bother me. I've always been more comfortable around winter storms, like 3 feet of snow. I'd take it any day over a severe thunderstorm.
Can you walk me through April 2nd, 2024? We had the 2 rounds of violent weather move through our region.
Yeah, it's pretty much just, it's mentally exhausting, to worry. And I've been diagnosed with PTSD from it. And it's really, I hate to compare it to this, but they said it's no different than, somebody going overseas and having PTSD from over there. It's just, less acceptable to hear somebody saying, "Oh, well, it's just a storm, get over it. You're a big guy," But it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It just keeps sending me back to that day to where I was pretty much standing in the hallway of my house, and they say you have you feel invincible at a young age, and I guess that was the first time my invincibility was taken away from me, and I was just pretty much just whatever was going to happen next was truly in God's hands. No matter what was going to happen.
So how do you monitor the weather? Do you monitor it through the Stormwatch 4 Facebook page and other outlets?
Yeah, I have about 2 major weather apps on my phone and 3 local, and I just try to converge everything together and see what y'all agree on the most and things like that, and like I said, it's time consuming. It's a lot of things. I can't go out for daily activities and things like that if I know it's going to be bad. If I hear about it being bad next week, I pretty much worry about it until next week happens or something changes for the good. It's just the way it is.
At what point after the severe weather moves through do you calm down?
Almost immediately.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know, it's preempted is what it is. It's like, I don't know what to explain it to. I don't know. You know how most people get nervous having a day in court or something?
Yeah.
Like you worry about it until you get to it, and then afterwards, if it's good news, then it's just melts away. I'm pretty much fine until the next, round. It seems to be more often than not nowadays.
Do you have any advice for other folks who suffer from storm anxiety?
Yeah, you're not alone. I've learned that there's a lot of people out there that have it. No matter how big you are, no matter where you came from, you may feel weak and may depress you, but you're really not. A lot of anxiety comes from being too strong for so long anyways. So I'm just take it with how you can, the best way. Like I said, I have a friend down the road that if it gets too bad, I can always use his, basement. But I don't really like bothering people that much, especially over it. But we all have problems. Just some of us are a little more, some of our problems are a little more less heard of than others.
Well, you can continue to contact us through the Facebook page, and we will give you the latest severe weather information when severe weather is threatening our region for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. You've actually, been there and, took initiative to ask me how I've been doing and stuff like that and keeping me up to date. And I appreciate you doing that for me, and it helps a lot.
Absolutely. We'll continue to do that and get you through the severe weather seasons across our region because, as you well know, the weather can change here on a dime, regardless of what time of year and what time of day it is.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope this will be able to help somebody out there that's suffering with the same thing.
Indeed.